So this is PDF accessibility, checking and updating accessibility in Adobe Acrobat. Our agenda. So we're going to talk about digital accessibility, and then we're going to talk about content management and accessibility, which mostly means our files and our documents that we're posting or sharing around the agency or whatever the situation is. So the bulk of it's going to be on PDF. So welcome, and I think we'll get started. Briefly about digital accessibility, mostly what you're thinking about is it perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust? Those are the web content accessibility guidelines. I don't know, I'm quoting that. That's what they're called. Primary fundamentals. But that looks like, can someone hear it or see it or consume it in a different way depending on their abilities? So does visual information have captions or descriptions or alt text or alt text? Are headers and styles used? Programs have built in some accessibility features, and if you use the program appropriately, it naturally makes it more accessible. Are labels and alternate text, there are labels and alternate text for screen readers. That's kind of like the first one. Descriptions, are there audio descriptions and visual descriptions depending on how the information is communicated. Descriptive links, which is not writing click here or this form. Basically, does the text for the link stand alone if you're not looking at it next to any other text? So it should say accessibility for Internet Content Manager slides or something that is logical for whatever the link is. Plain and inclusive language. And so that's the general idea of digital accessibility at like 10,000 feet. It's so very, very high. So most of us start with Word for our documents, and if you do it appropriately, it can be more easily accessible. And that again, this is going to be a little bit of a reiteration from last slide, but involves using the headings and styles embedded in Word, alternate text for images, table structure. We need to make sure the headers are identified and all that kind of stuff. And there's a table description. Again, descriptive links, lists and columns should be the system as that style so it knows and understands. A legible text size, the default standard that is preferred is Arial 12. You can look at the Chief Marketing Office's information or the accessibility minimum requirements site for that information. And then, is there good color contrast? This is one. PowerPoint has recently added tools for it, and there are external tools like the WebAIM contrast tracker, which I will link for you, but is a visual check. If the person is colorblind or just needs very stark contrast, will the person be able to read it? And so again, the next bullet is no color reliance. So the red, green, yellow that we use all the time for data is not helpful for people who are colorblind. They won't be able to tell which section is which. So it should just be communicated another way as well. Like maybe it's red and a pattern or icon or something like that. Thanks, Christy. And then the document title for Word, if you go to the file info, which I will start switching over to Word, you can add a title and then separately from like the file name, and that is the most user-friendly title usually and the one that we want to rely on. So I'm going to switch. So this is a document. I'm going to start with document. Just really quickly. This is not a training on how to use Word accessibility checker. I just want to start here really quick. So it always tells me whether or not it's accessible at the bottom, just based on the things that the Word accessibility checker checks. Sorry, it's a terrible sentence. But I see accessibility investigate. So I know that that means there's something it doesn't think is correct. So I'm going to click on that. And in general, if you go to review, you can go to check accessibility, and it's going to bring up this panel that tells you what's wrong. This is not a particularly hard document. I've already used my styles. The colors are fine. So it's just saying, hey, you don't have alternate text for this. I'm going to verify the description because it made one and it was terrible. Screenshot of document library. And to be fair, it should just be document library. You don't have to write screenshot. Document library. Again, if you're using Word Accessibility Checker and you don't know how. There's some, when you have a Word document that is accessible, if you use that setup and then save it as a PDF, it will be the most accessible to begin with for PDF. That's why I'm starting here. So I have this Word document. We'll see how it goes because I didn't check anything else in advance. And I'm going to save it as a PDF. It is highly suggested that you do not do print as PDF. Or where is it? Yeah, when you do print and then select save as PDF, that's not going to bring over any of your accessibility settings, so it's going to involve a lot more work in PDF. Save as PDF is an option, but isn't the best option. It will bring over some, but not all. The best option, if you have Adobe Acrobat, you should have this, is the Acrobat bar, and you do create PDF. So it's going to save it for me, and it will have the most accessibility settings. It brings over, and this is one of my slides. When you use the when you create the document in Word, all of these items will get moved over with the document. And so if we use headings, we won't have to redo them in PDF, etc. So my PDF popped up over here, and now I have a PDF. We've used the thing. The next step is the accessibility wizard. We met with a whole bunch of different people to find the easiest way to get the PDF the most accessible, and that's starting with the accessibility wizard. Thank you, Christy. And that starts with finding the action wizard. So if you've never added it, you'll have to go to more tools at the bottom. Go down, it's almost at the very bottom, and there's action wizard, and it'll say add if you've not added it before. I'm just going to click open because I have added it before, and then it adds it to your list right here. So mine's at the bottom, but the point is you either click open or add, and it's going to bring up this list. And what you're going to do is click make accessible, and it's going to walk you through most of the steps. So click make accessible and click start. It says, are you sure? And you say yes or allow. The first step is the title. I didn't put the title in, so I'm going to uncheck leave as is, and I'm going to say intranet page library review. I don't need doc. And that's what I'm calling it. Once you have your title, and if you wanted to change any of the others, you could. You click OK, and it's going to say, is this a scan document? Hopefully not. Scan documents are terribly inaccessible. Unless you absolutely must, I do not recommend it. So I'm going to say no, skip this step. It's not scanned. Then are there form fields? Also no. If there are form fields, it's going to go through and detect them, and you can go through and edit them if needed be after the fact. Next is language. This one is English. Obviously, if you need to change it, there are other choices. Woo, they jump me everywhere. Then click OK. But this is saying, hey, are there images? Do we need alt text? And so it's going to look. I'm going to push OK. Sorry, I'm trying to be slow on purpose. And it says there are no figures with missing alternate text. Had I not gone in Word and added that alt text that we just added, it would pull up the figures. And I'll show you what it does when it does that in just 1 second. After the alt text, the last step is the accessibility checker is what it calls it. So start checking. And it's going to bring up this menu. If there were many issues, there would be many things here listed. It says 2 issues, and they're the ones that require manual check. So this was a very naturally accessible document. On the other hand, if you went to this one, it would probably have a whole mess of problems. Let's see. Accessibility. Check accessibility because I've not done anything with it. I just assume. Well, not too many. So there's no tags, and the headings are not working well. So we'd have to go through and check stuff. But we've done our accessibility check, and we are here. I did want to show you, had we had any images that didn't have alternate text, this thing would have popped up instead of just saying okay. and it says how many images you have, and you can click through them with arrows, and it highlights it like in the background in blue, and you can write whatever you want the accessibility or the alternate text to be. This is what a reader is going to read. It's also what it's going to appear if the graphic stops working for some reason. So having anything there makes you know what graphic is missing, but also screen readers are going to be like image or document library or whatever it is, and they'll have an idea of what context you're trying to show in the document. Once you've done it, it's save and close. If this were a decorative figure, like a line or an icon that doesn't really convey any important visual information, you can mark it decorative, and it's not going to have anything for the reader. It's just going to pretend it doesn't exist because it is decorative. So it's not decorative. I'm unclicked it, and I'm going to hit save and close. Make sure you hit save and close, because if you just exit out of it, it doesn't save it, and you have to rewrite all of your alt text. So I have checked everything that goes automatically in this document. There are 2 checks that are pretty much always going to be manual. Well, 3, I guess, because color contrast. Color contrast is one of those, and that's visually like you can also use tools for it, but visually does it look like it's accessible? Are the headings too light? I'm going to open it. Sorry, it's over here. Accessibility. All right. This is my personal favorite, though I want to say Adobe has a really good one too. But this is a accessibility or contrast checker. It's WebAIM's contrast checker, and they have, if you click on here and click the eyedropper, it takes a second, but it's going to let me like pick a color. And so I'm going to say background's white, foreground or the text is that color, and it says it passes for normal text and large text. So we know it's great. If it had brought up an issue, or if we were doing our manual check and it said something like, oh, wrong way. Here, it's this light blue instead. Sorry, it's kind of small for you guys probably, but it's going to say fail right here. We try to hit AAA standards, but if you hit AA, you should be fine for the most part. So just make sure it's at least passing AA standards. And again, it's going to give you the color code if that's how you work, or you hopefully already had the color. You can adjust as needed, like the lightness or darkness, to make sure it passes. There's information right there for you for contrast. Did you know that the Chief Marketing Office provides brand standard colors that have been accessibility checked? The way the checker works, if there's the question mark, that means it's something you have to manually check. So you right click on it, and if you've already checked it, you can click pass so that you have this to remind you what you've done. So I know that's passed, so I've passed it. Next is logical reading order. The last 2 things about PDF actually is logical reading order and tags. These are the main things that you have to do manually. So logical reading order can be found right here, as can tags. This one's logical order, the Z, and the tag is a tag, logical. So when you click it, it's going to put a number on everything in your document. I got to give you the caveat that if you're doing a Visio or like an org chart, they are often quite hard to understand, and I don't know that I can personally help you with it, but I can certainly try. But they're very expected to take a long time trying to figure out and describe objects and figure out how it flows. It will be hard. But this one's pretty simple and straightforward. It's text in order, and honestly, it's in order naturally, so yay. But text in order, and it looks like the document is out of place. Or I'm sorry, the picture is out of place, and that is about it. These are all drag and drop, so the 20 image should be after number 10 we see, so it should be 11. I'm going to literally drag and drop, the little line shows up and drop it, and now it's 11. So now it's in order. And you would go through every page of the document, scroll through, and make sure that makes sense. If you see something that doesn't make sense, you can always, sure it's not anything weird. No. You can always right click on it and change what kind of thing it is. It's a background artifact. It doesn't exist. Or it's not this. Or it's not a header. It should be with this. Those are terrible examples because they didn't have any words. But you can change it as you want. You can drag and drop. The reading order panel lets you kind of select like this. If I want all of this to be a paragraph, it's selecting it. And I'm saying it's not headers, it's paragraph text. Now that's awful. Please don't ever do it. And you shouldn't experiment with this in that it's not easy to undo. It's not like a control Z scenario. You have to then reselect. I'll go do this later. But so I changed that to paragraph, and so now it's going 1 is a big block, 2, 3, 4, 5. And why you don't want to remove headings is because that's what lets the screen reader jump through sections. Like we would visually be like, oh, I don't need that, and move to it. That's what the screen reader does. It says, we have these 7 headings. Do you want to jump to one, or do you want to read? What do you want to do? So you can go through and select however you want. I'm going to go through and do, this is heading 1. This is heading 2. It should always be a like outline structure, 1, 2, 3. Even if you don't like what heading 3 looks like, or I mean, if you don't like heading 1 looks like, you can't use heading 3 just because it's nicer or smaller. Either change your styles and settings to make it make sense, or just stick with the 1 and 2 and 3 in order. Again, because otherwise it's going to make no sense to a screen reader. They're going to have to go like 6 levels deep just to find like the primary information. So reading order, we know it's perfect. Yay, we love that for us. The last item you have to go through is tags. Tags are essentially saying what each element is for the screen reader and or other situations, computers and such. So you'll see here, it says section, and it's highlighting the whole section, and then header 1. And it tells us which one's the header 1. So we can see visually here what things are labeled as header, paragraph, header 2, paragraph. That's a list paragraph, figure, whole bunch of stuff. I will note, if you're like, why did you just say that so fast? I have a list of them in, where are we? Reading order, tag structure. Okay. Here. I have 2 slides at the end, 19 and 20, that are listing what each tag means. So if you're like, I don't know what you're saying to me, it's right here. So making sure everything's tagged correctly means that the screen reader is going to understand what it's looking at. That's very helpful. So again, I'm going to go through my tags. I'm going to click through them if I want the pink box to show up. If not, you can also expand to see what like text is underneath it. Like I can expand my list so I can see literally which bullet point it is. And so it is helpful, and size apparently. It is helpful to go through and click through and make sure everything makes sense. And I might say, oh, heading 3, that doesn't make sense, and change it. Manual checks, we've talked about this, but in general, it's, are they high contrast colors? Are the headers consistent? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is the reading order logical? Doesn't make sense. Are figure descriptions and captions helpful and clear? Like, would someone know what it's communicating or not? Are links descriptive? Again, do they not say here or this or something like that? And do the tags make sense that we just went through? And are things communicated visually, also communicated another way? I'll throw out that infographics, super hard to make accessible. Like if you're like choice 1, choice 2, go over here. You absolutely can. Sometimes just a text version is better because it's too messy, or you can go through and make sure every piece reads in order. It depends on the situation, but be prepared if it's a very graphic heavy or very visual document that's going to take an extra amount of work. You can edit a tag by right-clicking. So if you don't want to use the like reading order guy where you highlight something, you can just literally right-click on the tag and do properties, and I can change it to heading level 2 or whatever you want to change it to, and close. And so now it's a heading level 2. And so if I click on, oops, where'd it go? No, I can't get it back. There you go. If I click on it, it calls it heading level 2, which is not correct for this document, but is showing an example. So that's PDFs. I'm going to briefly define roles related to this. A lot of people are like, is it my responsibility? Who does what? And in general, I can say as state employees, pretty much everything we do has to be accessible. We have employees and of course our general population that we work with, all of which who have disabilities. In fact, it's like, I'm going to get the number wrong. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 people in Vermont who are disabled. It's about 20%, give or take. And so it's a lot of people, and a lot of times you just don't know. So it's best to always do it. In fact, the general rule of thumb is, and it's not a perfect application, but if you're sending it to more than 7 people, it's public and it should be accessible. Or if more than 7 people will view it. That is a generic number. It's just kind of like, yeah, if you're sending it to your supervisor or your team and you know they do not require accommodations or you don't use a screen reader and you're editing a draft or whatever, send it without being accessible. That's fine. But if you're sending it to your department or your division or anything that's more than just an edit draft kind of scenario, it should have these things done. I will also note that accessibility feels like a lot of work when you first get into it, but when you start where when I've designed my document already and it's already accessible, it's actually pretty quick. So it's kind of about changing practice a little bit and then doing these extra few steps, and then we can have a lot more accessibility across the agents or state, really. So somebody asked about using a reader to check out accessibility. You absolutely can. There's actually one built into Microsoft. I'm going to note that screen reader users are a special kind of user because the programs are fairly complex and they know what they're doing. I, to be clear, use the narrator one to try out things myself, but it's not going to work perfectly the same unless you practice a lot, maybe. But if you just literally search narrator, that's the name of the voice app, and it's going to start reading whatever window you're in, and it will start on any Windows computer. Again, if you don't know the functionality, it might be rough, but you can practice, or I can send out information on how to use it. But it's a super helpful tool if you have no idea whether it's working or not, or if you want to get an idea of what's happening when screen reader users use it. But they have like keys to jump to headings and all sorts that I don't know.
Thanks, Heather.
Have a lovely week. We're in the middle. Have a lovely week, everyone.